Malden Road plant handles about 17 to 30 million gallons of water every day that it's able to successfully treat. But the plant can handle up to 70 million gallons of water without having to change any kind of treatment dynamics. When raw wastewater or raw sewage first enters our facility, it begins by running through what's called the coarse bar screens at the preliminary treatment building. And they collect a lot of the very large debris and trash that collects on them. The system has an automatic arm that will move through and rake up that trash, and then it will discard it into a dumpster. A lot of times we'll find rags, bottles, maybe some toys. The next step, which would be the primary treatment process, involves clarifying the wastewater. So the flow will enter the large, about 2 million gallon primary clarifiers. During this part of treatment, the biosolids will collect on the bottom of the clarifier, while any scum, is what it's called, will collect on the top or the surface of the wastewater. Scum is generally made up of what's called fog, fats, oil, and grease, and biosolids are anything organic that's able to collect and weighs heavier than water, so it will settle at the bottom.
At that point, the wastewater travels to the next section, which would be our equalization basin. Here we grow bacteria that treat the wastewater, and the bacteria likes a steady source of food and a consistent source of food.
And the suspended solids at this point are mainly comprised of the bacteria used for the treatment and used in the biological breakdown of our nutrients. After leaving our primary and secondary clarifiers, the biosolids will be broken down in our digesters. In this complex, we first have to dewater the biosolids. We will add a polymer to the biosolids, and at this point, the water will run off of the biosolids and drain through a woven belt we have. The operation and the process that we use is a gravity belt thickener, where the biosolids will collect on top and the water will drain through this woven belt. At this point, they will enter the digester, which functions very similar to human digestion. It's roughly about 100 degrees within the digester, and the bacteria will break down and usually at this point will release off gases, such as methane and hydrogen sulfide.
At that point, the wastewater goes to the bioreactor, which is the real heart of the process. This is an activated sludge process that also removes nutrients in the water. We provide air and certain environments for the bacteria to grow. The pollutants in the wastewater is actually a food source for the bacteria.
At this point, we're able to decide whether we need to waste these bacteria or return these bacteria to the bioreactor.
At that point, it goes to another clarifier called the final clarifiers, where it separates the bacteria from the wastewater, and the clear water travels to deep bed sand filters. It goes through a filtering process, and then it goes to UV disinfection.
The water will pass over a UV bulb, which will immediately, within a 1 to 2 second time period, destroy the DNA of any remaining bacteria or pathogens that exist within that wastewater. After it leaves our UV chamber, the wastewater will then be discharged into the Reedy River. We discharge this through a percolating effluent pipe that is located below the soil, which adds an extra element of filtration and integrates the wastewater seamlessly with Reedy River. Each day, the operators have to maintain control over a very large area, so they will have an operations control building at every plant. In this building, operators have a small room that's able to be used as a lab where they can collect and test samples to ensure the process is functioning correctly, as well as using what's called SCADA, which is an alarm system attached to a plant control system, which provides a virtual version of the entire plant, where an operator can see measurements and see any issues or upsets taking place, and then can rectify those issues by opening and closing valves or adjusting chemical treatment. Since we are permitted based on what nutrients we release, we have to make sure that those nutrients at the very last step are exactly within permitting requirements.
The waste treatment process is very important. because we don't want to discharge anything negatively into our watershed. So basically the laboratory tests any analyses from what's coming into the plant to the middle of the process to what we're sending out. We want to test what's coming in so the treatment process knows what they need to adjust, what chemicals they need to add, and then the middle of the process to make sure we're getting all of our solids out and any adjustments that need to be made. We test the effluent discharge, which is what we discharge to the waste treatment stream, to make sure we're not releasing anything harmful or violating any permit limits that we need to address and send out to the public.
ReWa has a watershed biologist whose primary job is to check on and maintain the health of our watershed everywhere that we discharge wastewater.
Mostly what I look at is a lot of the erosion that we get in our watersheds and how that can impact our infrastructure. Soil erosion and sediment loss is a big problem in our watersheds. The increasing intensity of the storms that we're seeing and just the number of storms that we're seeing causes a lot of erosion and can negatively impact our infrastructure around the waterways. I think we do a really good job of communicating with the public on just the overall importance of clean water and how our little piece of that plays a larger role, especially as you move downstream.
In addition to our plant that is treating wastewater and our lab that measures a lot of the nutrients found in wastewater, we also have a bandalone that is sitting within Brushy Creek and collects any trash or litter from Reedy River or entering Brushy Creek.
The trap itself is made out of aluminum and high-density polyethylene. It does weigh about 600 pounds. It's very light. It can be picked up. We have taken the equivalent of about 10, 20-yard dumpsters out of the bandalone, and that would just be plastic, glass, styrofoam cups. It has no nets that can trap wildlife or aquatic life. In fact, we find aquatic life hovering under the bandalone and different wildlife kind of climbing on top of it, using it to play.
Without wastewater treatment, cholera, dysentery, hepatitis, all these diseases would be prominent in the community.
We're removing trash out of the water to promote a healthier, safer Greenville.
Through wastewater treatment, ReWa is able to maintain a high standard of not just personal but environmental health and sustainability for a lot of our surrounding community and the upstate.